In the Montana Territory of 1882, a knock came at sundown. Catherine Whitmore stood behind her cabin door, rifle trembling in her weathered hands. 5 years alone, her 2 sons gone east never to write. Half her land claimed by the bank last spring. At 51, she'd made peace with dying forgotten. But when she opened the door, her breath caught. A tall cowboy stood in the snow, hat crooked, coat mended with careful stitches. In his arms, a boy no older than 8 slept against the storm. The man's boots were soaked through, the child's. Cheeks burned red from windburn. "I'm sorry to trouble you, ma'am," he said, voice rough as gravel but gentle. "We got caught in the storm. My horse went down. We just need somewhere to get warm." Catherine studied his face in the lamplight, seeing a deep weariness she recognized, the same hollow ache that stared back from her mirror each morning. She stepped aside, letting them in, unaware that 2 days would change everything, that this broken cowboy would make her feel alive again. And whether she was brave enough to let him. The fire was nearly out, Catherine noted, closing the door. Against the howling wind, but it was warmer than what waited outside. James Harrison Cole, he'd called himself, nodded his thanks, careful not to track snow across her worn floorboards. The boy stirred in his arms, lifting his head. "Is this a hotel, Pa?" Cole smiled down at him. "No, son, just a kind lady who let us in from the cold." Catherine ladled what remained of her parsnip soup into 2 tin cups thin as water, but hot, and handed them over, sitting across the small table to study these strangers who'd stumbled into her solitary world. "You don't have a wife?" she asked, watching the boy Mickey slurp the soup like liquid gold. Cole's hand stilled around his cup. "She passed 2 years back. Fever took her fast. After that, it was just me and Mickey." Catherine nodded once. "Mine died 7 years ago, pneumonia. I buried him behind the barn." The fire popped, wind whistled through the window cracks, and in that shared silence, something shifted between them, 2 souls who'd learned the weight of loss, the echo of empty beds. "You live out here alone?" Cole asked. "I do." Her voice carried no self-pity, only fact. "Had 2 boys. Both grown now. One chased gold to California, the other found work in St. Paul. Neither writes." Mickey had fallen asleep again, curled on the rug by the dying fire. Cole draped his coat over the boy's shoulders, then leaned back against the wall, his eyes finding Catherine's face in the firelight, the silver threading her dark hair. The lines that spoke of hard winters and harder losses. "You're strong," he said, "living out here alone." Catherine gave a dry laugh. "I'm old and stubborn." "That's not the same as strong." He looked at her, really looked. "I don't think you're old." She raised an eyebrow. "How old are you, Mr. Harrison?" 35. She let out a sharp breath. "You're a boy." "Haven't been a boy since I was 12, digging graves for cholera victims in Kansas." The truth settled between them like a stone dropped in still water. Catherine looked away, throat tight. That kind of honesty had weight. "You can sleep here tonight," she said, "but come morning, you'll need to move on." "I don't have much." "Understood," he paused. "But if you'll let me, I could fix that barn door I saw swinging in the wind, and the fence posts by the road." Catherine crossed her arms. "You offering to work for a place to stay?" "I'm offering to help." She studied him again, the way he sat straight despite his weariness, the way he looked at her like she wasn't invisible, like she was worth hearing. 2 days, she said. "No more." He nodded. "Fair enough." By the end of the 2nd day, the barn door hung true. The fence stood strong against the wind. Mickey had followed Catherine around like a pup, asking endless questions about chickens and root vegetables. She found herself smiling more than she had in years. On the morning of the 3rd day, Cole came in from chopping wood, snow-crusted. In his dark beard, he set the axe by the door and looked at her with something quiet burning in his eyes. "I know you told me to leave today," he said, but truth is, I don't want to. Catherine's hand stilled on the dish towel. Why? Because you're the first person in a long time who makes this world feel less empty. Her throat constricted. You're too young for me, Cole. I'm 51 years old. He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell wood smoke on his clothes, see the pale scar that crossed his left temple. You're not too old for love, he said, voice low and steady. I've waited my whole life for someone like you, someone who knows how to survive, who doesn't flinch at silence, someone who sees me. Catherine's breath caught. You don't know me. I know enough. His hand brushed hers, where it gripped the towel, and I'd like to know more. Mickey came running in then, holding an egg in both cupped palms like it was made of gold. Miss Catherine, the red hen laid one. She smiled, heart aching in a way she'd almost forgotten, taking the egg carefully, her fingers brushing Mickey's small hands. Maybe, she said softly, eyes meeting Cole's, you two should stay a while longer. Relief flickered across his weathered face. We'd like that, ma'am. We'd like that very much. And for the first time in years, the cabin felt full. 3 weeks passed like water through cupped hands. Catherine stood at the wash basin behind the cabin, sleeves rolled past her elbows, scrubbing Cole's work shirt in the cold morning air. The fabric was rough under her fingers, worn soft by years of hard use. As she worked, she became aware of his presence behind her, the quiet way he moved across the yard. Water's still freezing at night, he said, voice close enough to raise gooseflesh along her neck. She didn't turn around, couldn't trust herself to. Spring's still weeks off, Catherine. The way he said her name made her hand still in the soapy water. Look at me. She turned slowly, water dripping from her reddened fingers. He stood closer than propriety allowed, close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his brown eyes, the way his gaze traced the curve of her throat where her dress had loosened. You've been avoiding me, he said. I've been working, but her voice caught, betraying her. So have I. Doesn't mean I haven't noticed the way you look at me when you think I'm not watching. Heat flooded her cheeks. At 51, she felt foolish for blushing like a schoolgirl. Cole, what are you afraid of? The question hung between them like smoke. Catherine pressed her lips together, fighting the urge to step back, to put distance between them and this dangerous thing growing in the space they shared. I'm afraid, she whispered, that you'll wake up one morning and see what I see in the mirror, a dried-up old woman who's forgotten how to be anything but alone. Cole's expression softened. Without breaking eye contact, he reached for the dish towel hanging on the line, then gently took her hands from the basin. His touch was warm, careful, as he dried each finger. You want to know what I see? He asked, still holding her hands. I see a woman who opens her door to strangers in a storm, who teaches a lost boy about chickens with more patience than his own mother ever had, who works from sunrise to sunset and never complains. His thumbs traced over her knuckles. I see grace, Catherine. I see strength. And I see a woman who's been waiting so long to be touched with kindness that she's forgotten she deserves it. Catherine's breath hitched. The space between them seemed to thrum with possibility, with want she'd buried so deep she'd thought it was gone forever. Cole, she started, but he stepped closer, backing her gently against the cabin wall. Tell me to stop, he said, voice rough with restraint. Tell me I'm wrong, and I'll never speak of it again. But she couldn't. Instead, she found herself studying the line of his jaw, the way his shirt stretched across his chest, the pulse beating steadily at the base of his throat. I don't know how, she admitted. It's been so long since someone wanted me, really wanted me, not just what I could give them. Something fierce flickered in Cole's eyes. Then let me show you. His hand cupped her face, thumb brushing across her cheekbone. When he leaned down, she met him halfway, their lips finding each other in a kiss that tasted of coffee and promises. Catherine had forgotten, truly forgotten, what it felt like to be kissed by a man who meant it. Cole's mouth was gentle but insistent, asking permission even as he took it. Her hands found the front of his shirt, fingers curling into the worn cotton as warmth spread through her like whiskey on an empty stomach. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Catherine pressed her forehead against his chest. "This is madness," she whispered against his shirt. "Maybe," his arms came around her, solid and sure, "but it's the sanest I've felt in years." From inside the cabin, Mickey's voice called for breakfast, breaking the spell that had woven itself around them. Catherine stepped back, smoothing her skirts with hands that trembled slightly. "The boy," she said. Cole nodded, understanding. "We go slow. We're careful." But as Catherine watched him walk back toward the cabin, she knew there was nothing slow or careful about the way her heart hammered against her ribs. Nothing safe about the want that had awakened in her like sap rising in trees after a long winter. That evening, after Mickey had fallen asleep by the fire, whittling his latest creation, Catherine sat at the kitchen table with her ledger open. Years of Edward's careful script, mixed with her own on the yellowed pages, records of plantings and harvests, of lean years and plenty. She dipped her pen in ink and wrote, "Spring 1883, new fence posts set, garden beds prepared, Mickey learning his letters, C staying on to help with spring planting." Cole appeared beside her, reading over her shoulder. "Just see?" he asked quietly. She looked up at him, this man who had wandered into her life like an answer to a prayer she'd been too proud to speak aloud. "What would you have me write?" His hand covered hers where it held the pen. "That you're not alone anymore. That someone sees you, Catherine Whitmore, all of you." Outside, the wind rattled the windows, but inside, the cabin held warmth that had nothing to do with the fire burning low in the great dot April brought, the kind of warm rain that made the earth remember itself. Catherine stood at the kitchen window, watching Cole and Mickey work in the garden beds they'd prepared weeks before. The boy knelt in the dark soil, carefully placing seed potatoes while Cole guided his small hands. Their voices carried on the soft air, Cole's patient instruction, Mickey's eager questions. Something had changed in the weeks since that morning by the wash basin, not just between her and Cole, but in the very rhythm of their days. Meals taken together became longer, conversation flowing easier, evening chores done side by side, hands brushing as they reached for the same tools. And at night, Catherine lay awake in her narrow bed, hyper-aware of Cole's presence on the other side of the thin cabin wall. Sometimes she heard him moving restlessly and wondered if he was thinking of her the way she thought of him, with a longing that had grown beyond simple attraction into something deeper, more necessary. "Miss Catherine," Mickey's voice broke through her reverie. "Come see, the beans are sprouting." She stepped outside, the warm air lifting the loose strands of hair that had escaped her bun. As she walked toward them, she felt Cole's eyes on her, tracking the sway of her hips beneath her worn calico dress, the way the afternoon light caught the silver threads in her hair. "Look here," Mickey said proudly, pointing to the tiny green shoots pushing through the soil. "Pa says they'll be tall as me by summer." Catherine knelt beside the boy, very aware of Cole's presence as he moved to stand behind them. "They might be," she agreed, "if we're lucky with the weather. Will we still be here to see them grow?" Mickey asked with the directness of childhood. The question hung in the air like morning mist. Catherine felt Cole's stillness, the weight of everything unsaid between them. "I hope so," she said finally. That evening, after Mickey had been settled for the night, Catherine found herself alone with Cole by the dying fire. The silence between them felt different now, charged with possibility and unspoken wants. "Catherine," Cole said finally, his voice rough, "we need to talk about what's happening here." She kept her eyes on her mending, needle flashing. In the firelight, "What's happening? You know what?" He reached over and stilled her hands with his own. This thing between us, it's not going away. She set down her needlework and looked at him fully. In the flickering light, his face was all sharp angles and shadows, beautiful in the way of weathered stone. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Of me? Of this?" He gestured between them. "Of wanting something I might not be able to keep." Cole moved and kneeled before her chair, his hands covering hers where they lay in her lap. "What if I told you I'm not going anywhere? What if I told you I've been looking for home my whole life, and I found it here with you?" Catherine's breath caught. "Cole, marry me," he said quietly, "not because it's practical or proper, but because I love you. Because when I look at you, I see the woman I want to grow old beside." Tears spilled down her cheeks, tears she'd held back for so long they tasted of salt and relief. "I'm 51 years old. And I'm 35, so what? People will talk, let them." His thumbs brushed away her tears. "I don't care what anyone else thinks. I only care what you think." Catherine searched his face, looking for the doubt she was sure must be there, but found only certainty, only the steady love of a man who'd seen her at her worst lonely, desperate, clinging to a life that had seemed more like survival than living, and chose her anyway. "Yes," she whispered. Cole's smile transformed his entire face. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a ring, not gold or silver, but a smooth river stone set into a band he'd carved from wood. "I made this for you," he said, slipping it onto her finger, "from the creek where Mickey and I were headed that first night. Figured if a storm could bring us together, the river that runs beside it ought to seal the deal." Catherine laughed through her tears, studying the ring on her weathered hand. It fit perfectly, as if it had been waiting for her all along. "When?" she asked. "Tomorrow, if you'll have me." "Next month, if you need time. I'm not going anywhere, Catherine." She pulled him up from his knees and kissed him with all the pent-up longing of the past weeks. His arms came around her, lifting her from the chair as if she weighed nothing, as if the 15 years between them were nothing more than numbers on a page dot in the fire-lit glow. Catherine's hands trembled as they traced Cole's jaw, her touch. Hungry yet tender, a widow's yearning breaking free after years of quiet ache. She slid her fingers down his chest, unbuttoning his shirt slowly, each undone button revealing the taut, sun-scarred skin beneath. Her breath caught, a soft whimper, escaping as she pressed her palm against his heartbeat. Cole's hands, calloused but gentle, found the hem of her blouse, lifting it over her head with care, his fingers brushing the curve of her shoulders, her collarbone, igniting shivers across her skin. Their eyes locked, her gaze fierce with need, his burning with unspoken promises. He eased her down onto the rug, the warmth of the fire mingling with the heat of their bodies. Her hands roamed his back, nails grazing lightly as she pulled him closer, her sighs sharp and needy. His lips traced her neck, then lower, kissing the soft swell of her breasts, each touch deliberate, stoking the fire within her. Their breaths grew ragged, the air thick with low moans and the soft creak of the floor beneath them, their bodies moving together in a slow, intense dance of rediscovery and desire. When they broke apart, Catherine pressed her forehead to his. "I choose you, Cole Harrison. I choose this life we're building, and I choose you," he whispered against her lips, "every day for the rest of my days." They married 3 weeks later beneath the cottonwoods, with Mickey standing between them, holding a bouquet of wild columbines. No preacher, no guests, just promises spoken aloud and sealed with earth under their nails and laughter on the wind. Catherine wore her mother's pearl earrings and a dress she'd sewn from the blue calico she'd bought in town. Cole had shaved clean and combed his hair back, looking younger somehow, as if love had smoothed away some of the harder edges life had carved into him. "I promise to see you," he said, voice carrying across the clearing. "All of you, every day." "I promise to let you," Catherine replied, tears bright in her eyes, "and to remember that love doesn't have an expiration date." Mickey cheered when they kissed, and the sound echoed off the mountains like a blessing. Years passed like pages in a book written by steady hands. Mickey grew tall and strong, marrying a banker's daughter with kind eyes and a quick laugh. They built a house on the North Ridge and brought their children down every Sunday, the sound of young voices filling the cabin that had once held only silence. Cole's hair turned silver at the temples, and Catherine's hands grew more lined. But they still walked the length of their property every evening, fingers intertwined, sharing the comfortable quiet of two people who'd learned that love was not just passion, but presence, showing up day after day, choosing each other through seasons of plenty and lean. The ring Cole had carved for her never left Catherine's finger. In the lamplight, she would sometimes study it, this simple band made from river stone and wood, more precious to her than any gold. It reminded her of the night a storm had brought her everything she'd stopped believing she could have.